because President Trump, Attorney General Bondi, and their allies in the DOJ and FBI repeatedly claimed in public that the Epstein files have the names of power elite actors involved in human trafficking and sexual abuse of minors with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and they promised to release all the information in the name of maximal transparency. Remember that?
Señores, mientras el Congreso de los Estados Unidos se entretiene persiguiendo fantasmas como George Soros, adivinen qué es lo que están ignorando. Los archivos de Epstein, los que podrían destapar una red de abuso ligada a las élites del poder. ¿Quién prometió revelarlos? Donald Trump. Hoy vamos a hablar del brutal discurso que dio el congresista Jamie Raskin, el cual básicamente estalló en contra de los republicanos por utilizar su poder político para atacar a ONGs y personajes como George Soros, mientras ignoran por completo algo mucho más grave, que es el encubrimiento de estos archivos de Epstein que podrían implicar a figuras de alto perfil, y lógicamente incluyendo a Donald Trump. Y recordemos que ya pues acaban de bloquear los republicanos una iniciativa demócrata para la publicación de estos archivos. Más adelante hablaremos de este tema, pero por el momento veamos lo que dijo Jamie Raskin.
Thank you, Chairman. I now recognize the ranking member of the committee, Mr. Raskin.
Thank you very much, Chairman Van Drew. Pointing fingers is for losers. I'm quoting our colleague, Representative Chip Roy, from last week. And this has become a mantra for our colleagues in the wake of the devastating flooding in Texas, which cost already 132 lives with still 160 people missing. It's now an article of faith among our colleagues that in the age of climate change disasters, like Hurricane Helene, which cost 200 lives in North Carolina, or deadly tornadoes in the Midwest, you name it, in the age of out-of-control gun violence, whether in Uvalde or Buffalo or Charleston or Parkland, we should never engage in finger-pointing or casting blame or attributing responsibility to individuals. Although, of course, Donald Trump finger points and casts blame at Democratic leaders, as he did recently with Governor Newsom with the wildfires in California. But in any event, the point is, we don't really want to know which individuals are responsible. We should be addressing the underlying systemic problems like climate change, effective emergency response and planning, or mass gun violence and reducing access to military-style assault weapons, rather than vilifying people and casting blame on a partisan basis. Fine, let's adopt that rule. Finger pointing is for losers. For this committee, no to finger pointing, yes to problem solving. But this entire hearing is nothing but absurd political finger-pointing. And it's not even finger-pointing at people who actually run our government or occupy public office. It's finger-pointing at not-for-profit groups like Church World Service or HIAS, Lutheran Community Services, and the reviled philanthropist George Soros, who has given away hundreds of millions of dollars to make the world a better place. I don't like everything that every right-wing, not-for-profit group does in America or around the world, but I don't think it merits a full-blown congressional hearing. We didn't even have a hearing on the richest billionaire in the world, Elon Musk, who actually had a government job running Doge, destroying large parts of our government, firing tens of thousands of our federal workers. The Republicans didn't even call in Elon Musk for a hearing or have a hearing about what he was doing, but they want to have a hearing in 2025 about George Soros, all of the old, tired, exhausted, absurd conspiracy theories again. And I don't see any, and these witnesses can correct me if I'm wrong, I perused all their statements. I didn't see a single one of them allege a single crime, anything illegal going on. They just don't like the things that he invests in. They don't like what certain not-for-profit groups do. Well, I don't love everything that the right-wing not-for-profits do. Why are we having a hearing about this? What an absurd waste of time. This hearing, if our motto is going to be finger pointings for losers, this hearing is for losers. Because all it is finger pointing at somebody who doesn't even have political power. This is an oversight hearing before the Oversight Subcommittee that's not doing any oversight on the government. Indeed, the Judiciary Committee has not yet conducted a single oversight meeting this Congress with a single government witness. Not one. They've not called Attorney General Bondi. They've not called FBI Director Patel. They haven't even called anybody to talk about George Soros from the government. They won't subject any of their government officials to any cross-examination by this panel. Now, I think this is an absurd waste of our time. Why are we not addressing urgent policy problems like the pervasive nationwide violation of due process and First Amendment rights by ICE and other federal agents who arrive now in unmarked cars, in plain clothes, without badges or arrest warrants, and then snatch people off the streets and send them to a torturer's prison in El Salvador? Do you think the United States House of Representatives Judiciary Committee should have an interest in defending due process? So my colleagues say, you're not for due process for guilty people, are you? Well, yeah, because we don't know if they're guilty until they've gotten due process. That's why due process are the two most beautiful words in the English language. So it separates our rights and our freedoms from arbitrary state power. Why are we not addressing the threats to the security and safety of judges who are working to uphold the rule of law and now are subject not just to slander and defamation and signs all over Congress saying impeach this judge or that judge for standing up for the Constitution, now violent threats, not just to them, but to their family members? Why are we not addressing the mass firing of dozens of experienced crime-fighting federal prosecutors at the Department of Justice who've been fired en masse for the sole reason that they did their job and prosecuted police beaters, violent insurrectionists, and other rioters who attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021 in order to overthrow a presidential election in the United States of America and attack our Constitution? Why are we not having a hearing about that? We could actually have a hearing. Here's something we could agree on, Mr. Chairman, on a bipartisan basis. Why don't we have a hearing on what the whole country's talking about right now? If you turn on TV and go on the internet, why don't we have a hearing about the continuing suppression and cover-up of the information in the Epstein files about a child sex ring run by powerful people? The whole country, not just Republicans and MAGA, but liberal Democrats are in an uproar because President Trump, Attorney General Bondi, and their allies in the DOJ and FBI repeatedly claimed in public that the Epstein files have the names of power elite actors involved in human trafficking and sexual abuse of minors with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and they promised to release all the information in the name of maximal transparency. Remember that? They said this would be the most transparent administration in the history of the United States. But now they're shouting nothing to see here, sweeping it all under the rug, steadfastly refusing to release the files despite broad bipartisan demand to release the Epstein files after everything they've said publicly. The Democratic members of this committee sent a letter today at 2 p.m. demanding that the president keep his word and release the files to the American people, and that Chairman Jordan call a bipartisan hearing where we can work together to get to the bottom of this. How about a hearing on that? Do any of my colleagues want to talk about that, or does everybody want to talk about George Soros? I'm curious to know which of my colleagues support our call for a bipartisan hearing on the Epstein files. So here we are at this utterly pointless hearing, spinning absurd, discredited conspiracy theories again about George Soros. And again, I don't see a single claim of any criminality or illegality taking place. They don't like the guy's politics. I can find you 50 right-wing billionaires whose politics I don't like. So what? What an utter absurd waste of time this is. And it's an attempt to change the subject, obviously, from what America wants to talk about now, which is why, after promising for all of these years to release the Epstein files, will President Trump not release them? And we know they were friends, and we know they hung out, and we know there are all these pictures together. We know that Michael Wolff, Trump's biographer, said he saw photographs of Donald Trump and Epstein with minor-age girls. Well, where does that leave us? That doesn't look good if they then cover up all the information. Come clean and release the information, as the Republicans have repeatedly promised to do. So I look forward to hearing if there's any allegations of criminality or illegality. They should be turned over immediately to the Department of Justice today. Otherwise, this hearing, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, is for losers. It's about finger pointing at people who don't have any governmental power at all It's old recycled allegations, and we're not advancing the ball on anything. At the very least, the Judiciary Committee should be demanding that the Epstein files be made public. That is a bipartisan agenda. At least I thought it was. And if something has changed, please let me know. But I thought that we were all for that together, and we should move on that today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Ok, señores. Jamie Raskin no solo puso los puntos claros, sino que les tiró la verdad en la cara, con precisión quirúrgica. Los republicanos no quieren hablar del caso Epstein. No quieren tocar el tema, no quieren llamar a una audiencia, no quieren hacer públicas las pruebas, tampoco quieren investigar a fondo. ¿Por qué será? Y no me digan que es porque no hay pruebas, porque como dijo Raskin, hay fotos, hay testimonios, hay una conexión documentada entre Jeffrey Epstein y Donald Trump. Incluso, ¿no? El propio biógrafo de Trump, que es Michael Wolff, dijo que vio fotos de Trump con Epstein y con mujeres menores. ¿Aún así quieren que creamos que no hay nada que investigar? Esto no se trata de una teoría de conspiración, señores. Hablamos de un encubrimiento activo. Y lo más cínico es que mientras tanto están armando audiencias para hablar de George Soros. O sea, como si fuese, ¿no?, el villano de la película de Marvel. Solo porque no les gusta su ideología política. Seamos claros, si alguien cometió un crimen, ok, que lo investiguen. Sea Soros, sea Elon Musk, sea Clinton, sea Trump. Pero no puede ser que el Congreso use su poder que tienen para poder distraer, atacar y encubrir a conveniencia. Porque eso es exactamente lo que está sucediendo. Y lo que dice Raskin sobre la falta de los procesos, sobre agentes de ICE actuando como si fuesen policías secretos en dictaduras, es algo también escalofriante, ¿no? Pero claro, al parecer tampoco merece una audiencia. Seguramente algunos en la caja de comentarios me van a decir, bueno, es que esos archivos pueden tener implicaciones legales o de seguridad. Y miren, si de verdad hay preocupación por seguridad, que se redacten los nombres sensibles. Pero lo que no se puede permitir es que se oculte toda la información. Porque al menos, si se hace eso y se continúa con esta narrativa, esto va a oler a un pacto silencioso. Y el hecho de que hayan hecho campaña con la promesa de liberar los archivos, ¿no?, y ahora digan, aquí no hay nada que ver, es el clásico juego de manipulación de masas. Porque te venden humo y luego esconden todo cuando llega la hora de rendir cuentas. Ahora bien, señores, pasemos a hablar del tema de los republicanos y cómo han bloqueado esta iniciativa por parte de un grupo de demócratas. Están frenando la liberación de estos archivos de Epstein. Hablamos de documentos muy importantes, documentos que pueden exponer redes de abusos internacionales, cómplices ocultos, tantas verdades incómodas, verdades que no solamente los demócratas quieren escuchar, o bueno, al menos los votantes demócratas quieren escuchar, porque también la base MAGA, los votantes de Trump, quieren ver esto. No lo están haciendo para proteger a víctimas, eso queda claro, sino que quieren protegerse a sí mismos. Durante años ha habido esta pregunta, ¿no?, sobre quién estaba involucrado en esta red de tráfico humano. ¿Quiénes son? Ahora un grupo de demócratas intentó forzar la publicación de más documentos relacionados con este caso, ¿no? El resultado, pues bueno, bloqueado por mayoría republicana en el Congreso. Y aunque algunos republicanos dijeron que sí querían más transparencia, cuando llegó el momento de votar se quedaron callados o directamente votaron en contra. El mensaje es claro. Los republicanos no quieren que salga esta verdad. Al menos no toda. Quiero que veamos un fragmento de esta noticia y luego vamos a analizar punto por punto.
And just because folks like Charlie Kirk are now saying, hey, let this go, are true believers going to do it?
So this is a moment of sincere political urgency for Trump. Back in 2021, his lead pollster, Tony Fabrizio, did a survey of the Republican electorate and found that there were a full 10% of the Republican voters who said that they believed in QAnon conspiracy theories. So the political fallout potential here is very real. That's why the White House has, and President Trump himself, have been leaning on conservative influencers like Charlie Kirk. The fact that Dinesh D'Souza, who has fanned so many outrageous lies about the stolen election, about Obama's birth certificate, he's saying back off this. That really shows you that the influencers are falling in line. That doesn't mean, however,
how does that happen?
Well, it happens because a very angry president of the United States gets on the phone and yells at you. Or people from the White House really turn up the heat, which we know is exactly what's happening in this case. But that doesn't mean that the average voter, the MAGA moms and dads, are just going to forget and move on. Because for years they were told, elect Trump, elect MAGA Republicans, and we won't lie to you. We will get to the bottom of all of these cover-ups that have disenfranchised you, that have put these powerful people in positions to abuse their authority and to do the most egregious, unimaginable things possible, like sexually abuse children. And now they're being told just to forget it and move on. I don't think it's that simple, but as President Trump has always done, he will find somebody else to blame for this. And already you're seeing Pam Bondi being thrown under the bus. Dan Bongino is making noise. I don't know that Trump is ready to fire anybody yet. That's, from what I'm told, he's very concerned about even getting somebody to replace Pam Bondi, confirmed through the Senate. So we'll just see what else happens in the next few weeks.
Well, he certainly has been very clear about his support for her so far. Ken, let me play for you what the president's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, said just yesterday.
There needs to be more transparency on this. And I think that will happen. I mean, look, I don't know what truly exists there, but I know that this is something that's important to the president as well. He hears all the noise and he hears all of the consternation out there. And I think he's going to want to set things right as well. So I believe that there will probably be more coming on this. And I believe anything that they are able to release that doesn't, damage any witnesses or anyone underage or anything like that, I believe they'll probably try to get out sooner rather than later because they hear it and they understand it. So hopefully we see that happen sooner than later.
Sooner rather than later, there will be more coming, Ken. But is that, I don't know, at odds with what the FBI and DOJ said just last week?
It absolutely is, Chris. That's the problem. They took a hard look at this with an eye towards being as transparent as possible. And what the career Justice Department and FBI officials reviewing this concluded is there's nothing more they can release because what's left is material that's been sealed by judges, so they don't have the authority to release it, or that identifies child victims or other kinds of victims of sex crimes, or that makes unsupported allegations against uncharged people, which is things that the Justice Department never releases. I mean, this is a secret criminal investigation that was a massive intrusion of privacy, and these files are kept secret for a reason. But it seems clear that the political mandate here is that they got to find a way to release something. They have to throw their base a bone here. They may appoint a special secret investigation to look again at this and find some way to do something to appease the base because it's not working. There's breathtaking cynicism and opportunism, and I would say it's on both sides now. Those House Democrats, they know better. To suggest that some of these, files involving child sex victims should be released is just incredibly cynical. They're taking advantage of an opportunity here. We understand why they're doing it, but they're really playing with fire, Chris.
Yeah, Melanie, we really didn't see a lot of folks in Congress getting involved in this until last night, and that's when Democrats tried to force this disclosure of the Epstein files and failed. Is that the end of the story on Capitol Hill? Could there be more to come?
Well, not if Democrats having any say in the matter. As Ken was pointing out, they have been very eager to capitalize on this growing rift inside Trump's coalition, a rift that does exist among Republicans here on Capitol Hill. Now, I would say most Republicans didn't want to touch this issue with a 10-foot pole. Most of them were dodging the questions when we asked them here in the hallways. And that is because it puts them in a really uncomfortable position, having to take sides between either Donald Trump, the president, or the MAGA movement. Now, there were a handful of Republicans who did come out and say they completely support Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi for how she handled this case. But there are other Republicans who have said the American public deserves more transparency. Just take a listen to some of these reactions from Republicans.
You know, just folks back home are not asking me about the Epstein file. That is just not my focus. I did 2 telephone town halls last week, 5,000 Kansans on both of them. This was not even brought up one time.
I think it's reasonable for the American people to ask who he sexed, trafficked these young women to, if anybody, besides himself. And if there were others involved, why they haven't been prosecuted.
Part of the problem with this issue, like so many issues, is that the longer it lingers, the greater the imagination gets, and sometimes it outpaces the reality, and that can become a big disappointment for a lot of people.
Now, there was an amendment that failed in a committee last night, but there was one Republican who crossed over with Democrats. That's Ralph Norman of South Carolina, a Freedom Caucus member. He voted with that amendment that would have forced the release of the Epstein files. And meanwhile, there are Democrats who are vowing to keep pushing ahead with this issue. Mark Veazey of Texas said he's going to introduce a resolution and try to introduce that on the floor in the coming days. So even as Trump and his allies try to turn the page on this whole saga, Democrats not going to let it go that easily, Chris.
Yeah, so Jeremy, while some big name conservatives seem to be moving on, you have people like Laura Loomer. She wants a special counsel appointed. Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee was suggesting that Epstein's former partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, maybe should come and testify. Obviously, whatever actually is in those files, there's a pending petition in front of the Supreme Court, which would definitely make a U.S. attorney not likely to want any of that out, which may be why Laura Trump said anything they are able to release that doesn't damage witnesses or anyone underage. But bottom line, I mean, is Kevin Cramer right that the longer this goes on, the more trouble it is? They've got to get this under control.
It's not going away. And this is what Trump and the Trump Republican Party get for fanning these flames of conspiracy theories for years when most of them knew better, right? This is what you're seeing right now with a lot. I would describe it as like, the MAGA grift machine devouring itself, because you have people like Candace Owens, Laura Loomer, Tucker Carlson, a lot opportunists, a lot of them who are using this as an opportunity to basically grow their own audience and tell their supporters what they want to hear, which is, no, this still has legs to it. We don't know the full story here. We'll never know the full story. And that's the thing about conspiracy theories. They continue to self-perpetuate regardless of what type of concrete proof you have out there. You could have a video affidavit from Jeffrey Epstein from the grave saying, I don't have a client list. Hillary Clinton was not involved. And it still wouldn't matter. They would say it's AI. That's what conspiracy theories are. They keep going.
By very definition. Okay, Yasmin, that brings me to you. And I want to play what the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, had to say about all of this on Monday.
The American people deserve to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to this whole sordid Jeffrey Epstein matter. Democrats didn't put the Jeffrey Epstein thing into the public domain. This was a conspiracy that Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and these MAGA extremists have been fanning the flames of for the last several years. And now the chickens are coming home to roost.
So, Yasmin, we know how much MAGA voters care about this. Should it be a goal of Democrats? Should it be the goal of organizations like yours to make not just Democratic voters, but those middle-of-the-road voters who swing elections care about this, too?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. Leader Jeffries is exactly right. And I think this is just yet another example of what Donald Trump and House Republicans do over and over, which is tell voters what they want to hear to get elected and then do something vastly different. We're here, of course, here talking about the Epstein files, but it's also, we saw last week the single largest Medicaid cut in history. What all these things have in common is that they lie to us. And you know what Republicans, Democrats, and independents have in common is they don't like being lied to. So the question before us is, what do we do about it as Democrats? And part of the challenge before us is we know that voters, whether Republican, Democratic, or Independent, they're on our side, but they're not hearing us. We're not breaking through to them. And part of that is because we're talking to voters way too late. Our conversations with them are way too superficial and one-directional. They're not about the things that they really, really care about. And that's why we've got to throw away the playbook, the old playbook, and we've got to start a radically different approach. And at Swing Left, we're working with House Democrats now on a new program called Ground Truth, which is our most ambitious effort ever to reach voters. And that's not just Democratic base voters, swing voters as well, Republican, Independent, and squishy Democrats too, to make sure that starting now, over a year before the election, we are out knocking on doors and not skipping people just because they don't agree with us on everything, but really deeply listening, engaging, and trying to understand those ground truths of what do people care about and how do we make sure they know about the lies of the Republican Party that are directly going to impact their lives in materially harmful.
Ok, señores, me interesó mucho la parte en la que Laura Trump dice, ¿no?, que habrá más información pronto y que el presidente quiere hacer justicia. Suena bonito, ¿cierto? El problema es que todas esas palabras contradicen directamente lo que acaba de pasar en el Congreso, porque mientras hablan de transparencia, el propio partido bloqueó cualquier intento real para liberar los archivos. El Departamento de Justicia ya dijo que no puede soltar más información porque hay normas legales claras. Hay identidades protegidas, hay testimonios de menores y acusaciones que aún no están comprobadas. Entonces, ¿por qué Donald Trump y sus aliados siguen alimentando la narrativa conspirativa? Porque les conviene. Porque mientras exista más duda, más desconfianza generan hacia las instituciones. Esa misma desconfianza es el motor de la base, señores. Es la política sucia, pura y simple, porque te prometen algo que no pueden entregar. Y luego culpan a otros por no cumplir. Seguramente alguien dirá, bueno, quizás sea cierto, ¿no?, que hay cosas que no se pueden revelar por ley. Y hay ciertos puntos que tal vez les pueda dar la razón, como testimonios de menores, ¿no? Pero bueno, ¿por qué los republicanos no explican públicamente, ¿no?, y ponen fin al rumor, al escándalo? ¿Por qué en cambio dejan que influencers como Laura Loomer, como Candace Owens, sigan avivando el fuego? Porque saben que mientras más caos exista, más lealtad pueden obtener en su base. No quieren resolver el problema, quieren utilizarlo. Lo más interesante, ¿no?, es que ni siquiera todos los republicanos están de acuerdo, porque en esta votación hubo uno que votó junto a los demócratas para exigir transparencia, y ese es Ralph Norman, que es representante, si no me equivoco, del estado de Carolina del Sur. Pero bueno, es una excepción, ¿no? La gran mayoría prefirió seguir la línea del partido duro. Algunos incluso usaron excusas como mis votantes no me están preguntando por esto, o sea, como si eso fuese una justificación para ignorar un asunto de tanta gravedad. Y eso es una completa mentira, porque sabemos muy bien que la base maga está furiosa, la base maga quiere respuestas. Esto no solo es falta de interés, es una omisión consciente. Y eso nos dice mucho, ¿no?, sobre el estado actual del Partido Republicano. Ya no buscan respuestas, buscan distracción. Señores, el Partido Republicano está bloqueando deliberadamente el acceso a los archivos de Epstein, no por razones legales reales, sino por el miedo a lo que puedan revelar. Mientras tanto, utilizan el dolor de las víctimas como una moneda de cambio político. No se trata de justicia, se trata de control. Así que quiero terminar esto con una pregunta para ustedes. ¿Ustedes creen que los republicanos deberían dejar de jugar con este tema y de una vez permitir que salga toda la verdad sin importar quién quede mal parado? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, dale like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.